Hey there, and welcome to another edition of the show where today we are talking about hormones. Specifically, we are talking about cortisol, known as the stress hormone. So when those stress levels are going raised through the roof, cortisol levels are rising. Allegedly, this is preventing you from losing fat, it's preventing you from building muscle, it's preventing you from making the progress that you want to make. You get more stressed out about that, your cortisol levels increase a little bit more, and this vicious cycle continues and you don't make any progress. So could it be that cortisol is actually the reason why you're not making any progress, why you're actually jumping on the scales and you're not seeing anything move because you're too stressed out about the whole thing? This whole dieting process has got cortisol levels blasted through the roof. And now you're thinking, fucking hell, how do I manage these fucking hormones? So let's dissect cortisol, get right to the root cause of what's going on or what's not going on. Let's keep an open mind here and walk us through all of the different things that are going on, the research behind this, and what actually is the goddamn truth. So let's get cracking. Now, when we start, we're going to be talking about cortisol, the stress hormone. It's kind of labeled this way because when various different stresses happen on the body, cortisol levels increase. Now, people think that this is abnormal, that rising cortisol levels are just bad in any way, shape, or form. Therefore, it gets this label as being a stress hormone that is bad for fat loss, bad for building muscle. But actually, in certain instances, it's absolutely perfectly normal and perfectly necessary as part of the process. So let's think about this for a second. So when you're doing your resistance training, so when you're in the gym, you're lifting weights, you're lifting, bench pressing like a motherfucker, you're doing some glute hip thrust because you want a nice pert behind. Everyone likes a nice pert butt, man or woman. There's no discrimination there. Dudes, you need to get yourself a pert butt. Not for my benefit, but for your own benefit. I'm not looking at your pert butt here, dudes. Now, when you do that resistance training, maybe you're doing also some high intensity training of some description, you are going to get an increase in cortisol levels. Absolutely 100% guaranteed. It's a necessary part of the process. But here's the difference. Your cortisol levels are going to rise acutely, i.e. they're going to rise over a relatively short period of time in response to that specific bout of exercise. What you're not getting is a chronic, i.e. medium, long-term rise in those cortisol levels. It's acute. It's defined within a short period of time around that period of training, that period of exercise. So that's what's happening there. You're going to get this cortisol response. Now, you kind of need that cortisol response in order to build muscle, because if you're not getting a cortisol increase acutely around that bout of resistance training, that heavy lifting, then you're not really going to get the adaptations. You're not really going to have pushed yourself hard enough to generate the adaptations required in the body for you to adapt and for you to grow and to move forward. So you kind of really want those acute cortisol changes. That's absolutely 100% to be expected and 100% necessary. You're also probably going to get rising cortisol levels in a dieting phase. Again, this is not all confined to stress, like you want to tear your hair out or you want to rip someone's fucking head off. This is also about stress of the dieting process, stress you're putting on your body. So whether that is resistance training or whether that is through stress through dieting, then you are going to see these rises in cortisol. So you are going to get this. Now, it's also worth mentioning that you are going to get usually a peak in the AM for your cortisol levels, and that's going to die down over the course of 24 hours. Generally speaking, you're going to see more if you're just generally stressed in life. So maybe if you've got a stressful job, maybe you work long hours, maybe you work like unsociable hours, like through the night, shift working, all that sort of thing. Maybe you've got stressful family life, you've got young children, so you're not sleeping very well. All of these different sort of things compound together. Now, if you lead a stressful type of life, then obviously your general cortisol levels will be slightly higher. Also, generally tend to see a little bit higher cortisol levels in women. So that's just two things to bear in mind as well. But Cortisol also plays a role in fat metabolism. So when cortisol is released into the body, you are going to get some fat metabolism as well. So again, like it is with building muscle, losing fat, these are all sort of normal responses that are happening within the body that aren't necessarily something to get hugely worked up about. And maybe people around the fitness space, dare I say it, the cynic deep down inside me is saying that maybe they've just got some horse shit to peddle you. Maybe, just maybe, they've got some sort of program that says we're going to reduce your cortisol levels by buying this supplement. It's only $9.99 a month or something like that. So you are going to get these rises in cortisol level acutely around training. You're going to get it around dieting. Dieting, obviously not necessarily acutely, but it's going to happen over a period of time. And we'll come on to how to kind of manage that moving forward. Now, the reality really is that cortisol does not prevent you losing fat, and it doesn't prevent you building muscle, especially when we're kind of just looking at these acute responses. So what you may see is a change in water retention. So a rise in cortisol levels could make you increase water retention. That does not prevent you losing body fat. You can still lose body fat whilst your weight doesn't change. That is possible. You could get such changes in water weight fluctuations, things like that, that actually when reality hits, the scale weight doesn't move very much, but you do lose body fat. Then potentially when you kind of reduce those cortisol levels by just, de-stressing a little bit, then the water starts to rebalance, and then on the scale is reflected what you have actually lost in fat. So bear that in mind. The reality also, this is an important one. The reality is that measuring cortisol for the average person is fucking impossible. Even in a lab situation, it's difficult. So someone telling you that they're going to help you make progress by manipulating your cortisol levels and tweaking things here and tweaking things there to make sure your cortisol levels come down is actually talking bullshit. Ask them, how will they measure it? How will they measure that your cortisol levels are reduced? How are they going to actually physically measure those changes in that hormone production within your body? Simple answer is they can't and they won't. So as I said before, cortisol is just going to be a case of potentially increasing water retention, masking the true progress that you're making on the scale. Now, training and dieting is obviously going to increase those cortisol levels, but fat loss can still happen. What we want to try and avoid is the chronic increase in stress, the chronic increase in cortisol levels. That's what you want to try and avoid. And that just makes sense. Nobody wants to be super fucking stressed all the fucking time, because you are going to end up going sort of Michael Douglas falling down on someone. And if you're too young to understand that movie reference, go and watch it right now. Now, what we're going to look at here then is you can't really just say, well, I'm going to specifically take this supplement and that's going to reduce my cortisol levels by this much and all that sort of shit. You've really got to go back to the basics and do what you can to reduce stress levels and avoid chronic high levels of stress for long periods of time. So that means you're going to have to focus on your sleep, making sure your sleep's optimized. Maybe you're getting your 6 to 8 hours of sleep per night. You're turning off your tablets, your mobile phones well before that. You're making sure you get good quality sleep all the way through the night. You want to eat well so that you're making sure that you're getting the nutrients that you'll need. You're not super, super low on calories. So if a dieting process then increases cortisol levels, if you go like super batshit crazy on your calorie deficit, you are going to make that process a little bit worse. You're probably also going to feel like shit. You're probably also going to be stressed out in that process. So again, all of these confounding things adding together are probably going to not help you with your cortisol levels and your stress levels. One thing you might want to do is think about not overtraining. So don't go balls deep into a training program that's 7 days a week with, double workout sessions, doing cardio 3 times a fucking day or whatever it is, it's not going to be beneficial for you in the long run. And it's absolutely not fucking necessary to make your goals a reality as well. You also want to think about taking regular diet breaks. Now, this might be like every 12 weeks, you just might say, okay, let's take the foot off the gas. Let's go back up to maintenance. Let's let everything reset on multiple different levels, and also take a psychological break from the whole process. Maybe that will help you de-stress. Maybe that will help rebalance things. You also want to make sure, and this is easier said than done for a lot of you, I appreciate that, to de-stress in life wherever possible. Now, that is literally just going to be a lot of people screaming at me saying, Simon, how the fuck do I do that? You don't know what I do. You don't know what job I do. You don't know what family life I have, blah, 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 blah. You're just saying that just because you live this life where, you know, you sit and, you know, fucking make videos all day long and shit like that and talk on podcasts. Okay, that is what I do, but it's also quite stressful as well. You might not look at it, but, you know, you have that kind of float on the water and paddle like fuck, float like a duck, paddle like fuck, whatever the fucking phrase is. That's me. So I may look calm and serene on the top, like some beautiful swan, but I'm paddling like fuck underneath. So it's all stressful. It's all relative. But what you want to try and do is try and minimize as much of that stress as possible. Now, the thing that I want to leave you with here is a few points. So let's kind of recap a little bit, kind of cover everything. So number one is that acute cortisol level increases are absolutely expected around your resistance training, around any high intensity work. Also, as part of the dieting process, you are going to expect some cortisol level increases. However, this doesn't stop you preventing fat and doesn't necessarily stop you building muscle. In fact, some cortisol level increases are actually perfectly normal and will support that process. Key thing to remember is that you can't fucking measure it in real life, day to day. Practically, it's just not going to happen. If someone tells you they can, they're talking absolute bollocks. Now, what you therefore want to do is focus on the basics. You want to focus on sleeping well. You want to focus on not dropping your calories too low, making sure you've got your nutrients in, making sure you're taking diet breaks, not overtraining, all of that sort of stuff. So basically, I want you to major in the fundamentals and stop majoring in the minors. Because if you go disappear down this rabbit warren of, I must decrease cortisol levels, so I must do all this horse shit that someone's telling me to decrease my cortisol levels, and you forget all of these basics, you're just going to make yourself, you're just going to disappear up your own fucking ass for a start. You're going to get yourself more stressed out, and therefore your cortisol levels are going to increase more, making you more stressed out, making that scale weight not move because of the water retention. And that's going to stress you out even more, which creates this bigger vicious cycle. So focus on the fundamentals of your calorie deficit and all of those things that I mentioned to make sure that you're just doing everything possible to do this process right. Then just forget fucking everything else, because you've done everything that's within your control to get this process right. If you just do that, I promise you, you will be fine. You don't need to disappear up your ass or anyone else's ass to deal with cortisol levels. I've talked a lot about disappearing up asses, but hey, forgive me, it was just a turn of phrase. Now, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode of the show. Hopefully it answered a few questions for you, maybe put your mind at ease if you are worrying about cortisol levels, or you'd heard some bullshit crap on the internet, wherever it is that you surf for information. So just put that to one side, listen to the truth. That's what you've just received. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, come and tell me. I always say this at the end of every podcast, but I want you to come and tell me on Instagram. Come and go visit me at iron_paradise_fitness. Drop me a message. Hit that follow button. Drop me a message. Say, hey, Simon, listen to your podcast. You're fucking amazing. I love your hat. I love your hair, or whatever it is you love. Tell me you love. Then do that. And then, I'll respond, because I'm a nice guy like that. I'll chat to you. And that'd be cool. And if you want to just leapfrog that whole process and you want to say, Simon, I just want to skip the fucking small talk. I want to get you on board coaching me to live a leaner, healthier life so I can have this badass, sculpted, muscular, sexy as fucking hell body. Let's skip to that and let's talk online coaching. Cool. I love you. Let's do that as well. I'll put a little linky thing in there that you can click and you can go visit, and then you can kind of find out about online coaching. You can book in, we can have a call, and we can talk about how we get you from A to B in the fastest possible time frame. Wouldn't that be fucking awesome? Especially with about 3 months to go until summer. You can look nice and lean, and shapely and sculpted and awesome as fuck for summer. So go do that. But for now, all I'm going to say is thanks very much for listening. Keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next one.